Have you ever set your alarm for 5 a.m., convinced tomorrow would be the day you finally change your life, only to hit snooze and wake up hours later feeling the same as yesterday? It happens more often than people admit. Many promise themselves a fresh start, but days quietly turn into months. What if the real difference between people who stay stuck and those who move forward is simply how they use the first hours of their day? A year ago, Daniel Parker's life looked like it was moving in slow circles. He was 33 years old, living in a small apartment outside Phoenix, Arizona, and working long shifts at a distribution warehouse. The job paid the rent, covered groceries, and kept the lights on. But every evening followed the same routine. After a long shift, Daniel would drive home exhausted, microwave something quick for dinner, and collapse onto the couch. He told himself he deserved a break after working all day. The problem was that those breaks quietly consumed his entire evening. Daniel wasn't lazy, and that made his situation even more frustrating. He showed up to work every day and often volunteered for overtime shifts when the warehouse needed extra help. His supervisors considered him reliable and hardworking. But reliability wasn't moving his life forward. His paycheck stayed the same, his savings barely grew, and his routine felt like a loop with no exit. Every so often, while driving home from work, Daniel passed a row of office buildings downtown. He would watch people leaving the buildings carrying laptops and coffee cups, talking about projects and plans. They looked like they had somewhere important to go. Years earlier, Daniel imagined himself in a career like that. But after repeating the same routine for so long, the idea started to feel distant. One evening, Daniel visited his friend Marcus for dinner. Marcus had recently started working for a marketing company downtown, and his life seemed to be moving in a completely different direction. While they were talking, Marcus asked a simple question that stayed in Daniel's mind long after dinner ended. "So what's your next move?" Marcus asked casually. Daniel laughed and shrugged it off, but the truth was he didn't have an answer. He had been so focused on maintaining his routine that he had stopped thinking about where it was actually leading him. That night, Daniel drove home feeling strangely uncomfortable. Not because Marcus had said anything rude, but because the question forced him to face something he had been avoiding. He wasn't planning his future. He was simply hoping something would eventually change. A few days later, something unexpected happened that started shifting his perspective. One morning before work, Daniel stopped at a small coffee shop near his apartment. It was early, barely past sunrise, and the shop was quiet except for a few regular customers. At one corner table sat an older man reading a business book while drinking black coffee. What caught Daniel's attention wasn't the book. It was the man's energy. When Daniel picked up his coffee, he joked with the barista that being awake that early should probably be illegal. The older man overheard the comment and laughed. "Early mornings are the best part of the day," the man said. Curious, Daniel sat at the nearby table and asked what he meant. The man introduced himself as Robert Hayes, a local entrepreneur who owned several auto repair shops in the city. As they talked, Robert mentioned something that immediately caught Daniel's attention. "I wake up at 5 o'clock every morning," Robert said casually. Daniel nearly spilled his coffee. "5? Every day?" he asked. Robert nodded as if it were completely normal. "Those first hours of the day belong to me," he explained. "No phone calls, no meetings, no distractions." Daniel admitted that he had tried waking up early before but never managed to keep the habit for more than a few days. Robert smiled. "That's because most people treat it like a challenge instead of a lifestyle," he said. Then Robert explained something simple that stayed in Daniel's mind. If someone spends just 2 focused hours every morning improving their skills or health, that adds up to hundreds of hours over a year. Before leaving the cafe, Robert gave Daniel a challenge. "Wake up at 5 a.m. every day for 90 days, he said. "Use the first hour to learn a useful skill. Use the second hour to improve yourself physically or mentally." The suggestion sounded simple, but it carried the kind of discipline Daniel had never seriously tried before. At first, the idea sounded extreme, but the more Daniel thought about it, the more sense it made. His evenings were unpredictable and exhausting, but mornings were empty. Those quiet early hours suddenly looked like unused space where real change could begin. The next morning Daniel's alarm rang at exactly 5 a.m. His first instinct was to turn it off and go back to sleep. His brain immediately started offering excuses. But something about Robert's challenge pushed him out of bed. For a brief moment, he wondered if this small decision might be the beginning of a different version of his life. The first week was rough. Daniel stumbled around the kitchen half asleep and sat at the table with his laptop. He started watching online tutorials about spreadsheets and data analysis. At 6 a.m., he would go outside for a short walk around the neighborhood before getting ready for work. At the beginning, the routine felt uncomfortable. Some mornings Daniel questioned whether it was worth the effort. But after a few weeks, something surprising started happening. He began waking up before the alarm. His mind felt clearer in the mornings, and the quiet time allowed him to focus in a way he had never experienced before. Over the next 2 months, Daniel completed several online courses in spreadsheet management and basic accounting software. The more he practiced, the more confident he became. Then one afternoon at the warehouse, an opportunity appeared. The company had been struggling with inventory tracking for months. Reports were messy and mistakes were common. Remembering what he had been learning every morning, Daniel offered to help reorganize the system. He spent several evenings creating a new spreadsheet that tracked inventory more accurately. When he showed it to his supervisor, the reaction was immediate. "Where did you learn to do this?" the supervisor asked. Daniel smiled. 5 in the morning, he replied. Within a few weeks, the improved system helped the warehouse track inventory more efficiently. The warehouse manager noticed the change and called Daniel into his office. He said he was impressed that Daniel had taken the initiative to solve the problem. The new role came with a better schedule and a significant pay increase. It also meant Daniel would move from the warehouse floor to a position in the logistics office. For the first time in years, his work began to feel like progress instead of repetition. Walking out of that office, Daniel realized something important. His life hadn't changed because of luck. It had changed because he spent 90 mornings building skills while the rest of the world was still sleeping. Those quiet hours had slowly turned effort into opportunity. 6 months later, his routine still begins at 5 a.m. The habit that once felt difficult had now become a natural part of his day. Instead of forcing himself out of bed, he often woke up before the alarm even rang. But now those early hours feel less like a challenge and more like an advantage. They give him uninterrupted time to learn, think, and prepare for the day ahead. While others are still asleep, Daniel is already building momentum for his future. Looking back, the biggest change wasn't the promotion or the paycheck. It was his mindset. He no longer sees himself as someone stuck in a routine, but as someone capable of creating new opportunities. The truth is that waking up early doesn't magically solve every problem, but it gives people something incredibly valuable: quiet time to build their future. 2 focused hours every morning might not feel like much in the moment, but over weeks, months, and years, those hours can quietly transform a person's life. So here's a question worth asking. What would happen if someone protected just 2 hours every morning for the next 90 days? What skill could they learn? What goal could they finally begin building? Because the difference between where someone is today and where they could be a year from now might not be talent or luck. It might simply be how they choose to begin their mornings. If Daniel's story made you think about your own routine, take a moment and decide what you would build during your first hour tomorrow morning. Share it in the comments so we can keep each other accountable. And if you enjoy motivational stories like this one, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos about habits, discipline, and personal growth. Sometimes the smallest habits, like waking up at 5 a.m., can quietly change the entire direction of a life.